and welcome to Spotlight on MTSS Planning. We are welcoming you to this episode of JCPS Digital Learning Live. My name is Tara Isaacs. I am the Director for Professional Learning and Development, working in the branch of Teaching and Learning. And I'm joined today by 4 incredible principals and their teams, as well as our Executive Administrator for our Zone 1, Chris Deely. First, I'd like to do a shout out. We have Kym Rice representing Shawnee High School. Glad to have you. And we'll let you introduce your team in just a moment. We have Rob Fulk from Marion C Middle School and High School. Welcome. And we have Jamie Wyman, principal at Carter Traditional Elementary. Welcome to Jamie. And then Chris Deely from Zone 1. Great to have you all here. We are going to let them do introductions, but just a reminder that we have Elaine Abenatha, our wonderful control center and expert in helping us get set up today. And she will be funneling different questions through us. Just a reminder to the group, make sure you introduce yourself again and also which school you're at and who you're joined by. And for those of you out in the digital world, we ask that you hit the subscribe button so that you can continue learning with us in JCPS. We are on a journey here. We are loving the work and learning, and we take great pride in sharing our work with others so that we're all growing in the interest of our students. So I'll turn it over to you, Kym, to allow you to start with us first.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Again, I'm thankful for this opportunity. So thanks for asking. It is just me tonight. You have to hear from me all during this broadcast, but I will make sure that I keep it brief. I want to talk to you a little bit about how we do MTSS here at the Academy at Shawnee. I have been here, it'll be a year in March, and it is no secret that the Academy at Shawnee has had some issues with culture and climate, specifically related to our academic and behavioral supports. And so one of the things that we really saw that we needed to really focus on first was working on the behavioral supports. And so we are looking at our System 5. And just to let you know, let me just tell you who's on my team that we have for MTSS. First of all, it's myself. I have my Go Clarity coach, Dr. LaRonda Mathis, who's not here. We have Dr. Erica Young, who is a student success coach. We have our counselors. I have Mr. Jason Willis and Ms. Giovanna Smith, the counselor, and then my freshman academy counselor, as well as my building assessment coordinator. And of course, the assistant principals are a part of that team as well. So if we can go to the next slide there, and let's talk a little bit about what MTSS looks like here at the Academy of Shawnee. We are focusing on PBIS. And so what we do, I know in most schools do that, we are reviewing our expectations every 6 weeks. We found out that that worked for us at the very beginning, except that it has become more important for us to review those weekly and to do it more on a consistent basis. So we make sure that we have those things posted in our common areas and in all of our classrooms. And then weekly, our teachers are part of a behavior support EPD. We're able to have a schedule where we have an instructional collab period, and that is our EPD. And teachers receive their training. We look at behavior data. We analyze it in this meeting with our success coach along with our assistant principals. Once we analyze that data and we look at that data weekly, then we focus on where are the areas of concern. And so the EPD then spreads itself into classroom management or areas of focus for in the hallway or in our common areas. Then we also have a behavior support team. And the thing I like about the behavior support team is that it's just not made up of the assistant principals in the building, but we actually do leave a lot of the work up to some core teachers. And so they are the ones that sit and look at the data, and they evaluate it and look at where we are with our PBIS plan and progress. Next slide, please. And so as we go through and looking at our System 5 and the work that we need to do around that, I also ask our administrative team to reflect on the work that they're doing within their particular area that is attached to System 5. I think we're ready to go on to the next one here. Okay, and so we also have a restorative practices consultation. We have a coach that's assigned to us by the name of Monica. And what Monica does is she looks at our data. She works with our success coach, and they talk about what the data looks like. But really what I like about Monica is that she uses that data and then gets with me and the administrative team, and we discuss immediately what things we see that we need to work on. Monica is not with us here at the Academy of Shawnee. She's not in Louisville. She is housed. I think she's in New York. So she just only gets to see that out view point of data. So it's great to have her sit down. She'll consult with us on a monthly call. And then when she gets here, she'll meet with us and talk about what are areas of needs that we see in addition to the data that she's helped us analyze. And then we also do restorative circles. All teachers are required to participate in restorative circles in their classes. And so we have it set up on the schedule that there's a different restorative circle held in each class on a different day. So Monday's math, Tuesday is science, and it goes on like that. But also we as teachers make sure that we have restorative circles. We can't ask kids to do restorative circles if we are not doing them ourselves. So we have restorative circles. We make sure that we are modeling that behavior for our students. Something new that we've done, we have started having monthly school-wide celebrations, and we call it the Golden Eagle of the Month. And the great thing about that is that we ask the academy teachers to identify students who are exhibiting our expectations as lined out under PBIS. We have a breakfast for them. We invite their parents. We present them with a medal and with a certificate. Now, it might not seem big to you, but the big thing is that these students get to come out of class. They get to have breakfast in the principal's conference room. And they're able to invite a guest if a parent can't come. So we've had some students that invited another classmate or a significant other, if you will, for high school. So that's really been something that has been nice for us to do that here. And we make sure that we have a representation from all of our areas within our building. We have advisory, and we do advisory weekly. We do that on Wednesday. So we are on a different kind of schedule on Wednesdays, but during advisory, we focus on things like our PBIS. We look at what restorative practices look like. We have goal setting. We have all types of things that take place that will help us to further shore up our work in System 5. We also have an attendance committee. And that attendance committee meets weekly to review our individual student concerns as well as case management. So where are we now? We have a behavior plan and core components that have been communicated. We are working to make sure that this is reviewed in its entirety with all staff. The unique thing about the Academy at Shawnee is we are a 6 through 12 school, but we have added on some additional resources, if you will, some outside resources. And so it's important that they know as well what the expectations for our behavior are here in the building. Not that they are with our students that often, but occasionally they do have to interact with our students. So we want to make sure that everybody's understanding of the lingo and what we're looking for. The expectations are in place. We have room for growth in the practicing and reteaching and just being consistent across the school building. We are in the process of completing this task, making sure that there is some consistency. I have started probably back in August when I first got here. If you have not used the DMC for the district or the Data Management Center of the district, you are missing out. It provides a great amount of data to look at and to review. And so it would have been very easy for me to just give the data to my leadership team and to my teachers and say, here's where it is. But we spend time, and I actually make them go to the DMC, and they have to look up the data, and they have to be able to tell me what the data says, what it looks like, and how they're using that. So our leadership team and behavior teams are both a part of that. We are currently focused on strong tier 1. Tier 2 and tier 3 are in development, and we have partially implemented our fully functioning systems since our return in January. One of the things we also have is an hour and a half session during opening days where we looked at our behavior supports framework. Again, I've talked about the monthly coaching consultation from IIRP, as well as work with our success coach. We originally started calling our success coach such in about September. We felt behavior coach was just not a good term to use. We wanted to make sure that the kids understood that she was there to help them be successful. So she does a lot of coaching, not just with the teachers, but with our students to help them understand how they are impacted by the work in System 5. We have our restorative practices school-wide. We're just making sure that we have consistency throughout the classrooms. And we're also in the process of developing additional exclusionary interventions and consequences for our students. We are developing a consistent system for our transitions. We originally looked at how that would work with having students not just coming back from the alternative setting, but we have a lot of students who are just coming back from being gone, being absent. We are working on bringing down our high number of absences, but we just need to make sure that those students are acclimated back into the population. So having those transition meetings are very important with the success coach as well as teachers. And also just to remind students of what the expectations are on a daily basis for our behavior expectations. And then again, the ECE consulting teacher and our success coach are in the process of developing this work. So that's the MTSS at the Academy at Shawnee. It is going to be an ever-evolving, ever-changing process, but it is great work. And we look forward to making sure that we are doing the right things to make student achievement a priority here for us.
Thank you, Ms. Rice.
You're welcome.
Looks like we're moving on to more middle school and high school.
Hey, good morning. I'm Rob Fulk, principal of the Marion C. With me today, right here is Tim Alexander. He is one of our instructional coaches on the middle school side covering math. Renee Shoemade, instructional coach on the middle school side covering ELA. And then right here, Erica McClure, Goal Clarity coach, instructional coach on the high school side. We're going to break our part of the presentation between us and talk about some of the different aspects. What I did want to start off with, listening to Ms. Rice up at Shawnee, I want to give a shout out to her. Being there barely a year now, the amount of work that she's put in place there is pretty staggering and pretty impressive. She's a pretty awesome principal, but we all know that. Here at Moore, we were tasked with, like every other school, to put together this MTSS handbook. And it's a big document, right? And I look at it, and as a principal, I have to really kind of wrap my brain around, all right, what is the purpose of this document? How do we use this document? And is it one of those documents that we all know might go into a file cabinet, or is it going to be something that's going to be worthwhile? It took me a little bit to figure out the why behind MTSS and really kind of reach outside of the district, as this is for many of us new work, and look across the state and the nation on what we're doing with MTSS. And what I kind of keyed in on the MTSS handbook is really, it comes down to, it is a standard operating procedure of how you do school. It is the document that if I was to get hit by a bus tomorrow and the rest of my admin team was to get hit by a bus and somebody had to come in here and run in the school, they should be able to pick this up and say, this is what we do for tier 1, academics and behavior. This is what we do for tier 2. This is what we do for tier 3. That standard operating procedure for how we look at school. So when we look at the process of how we put this thing together, The first was really to take some intentional time as a school and as a leadership team before we even started involving teachers and say, what is the why behind this? Where does it fit in our systems work? System 5 is the big system, but it cross-cuts really into all the other systems. And really, if you're looking at it as a manual of this is how we do school, then it has to be a living document. So we decided then, after we've got an idea of what it's going to look like, who's going to touch this work. And this work really had to be across our leadership team. We're a 612 campus. We have 2,300 little bodies on campus that we need to educate, 240 staff members. If this lives in the realm of just 1 or 2 people, it's going to die on the vine. So we assembled our team, and the team is what you see in this room with me here, several assistant principals, some teacher leaders, other folks that came to the table when we started the document. Now, if you pull up our document as an example, one of the first things you'll see on page 2 is a highlighted section that's not done yet because it is a living document. And it's one of those things as we go through it, we have all of these plans. We have literacy plans, we have writing plans, we have intervention plans, we have high school intervention plans, middle school intervention plans, we have our attendance plans, our behavior plans, our behavior intervention. To synthesize and place that into one place was where we thought we would have some power in this document. So our next step as we move forward, just from my perspective as a principal, is we have established the document. We have the folks that have had their hands in the work, teacher leaders that have had their hands in the work. Now we really need to be able to deploy this and make this a document that works across our building. And that's, I think, where obviously the real work begins. But in constructing the document, where we found some success was really spreading that out and then using the functions, especially on Google, that we lived in the comment section off to the side. I mean, I would hit it with, my 30 or 40 comments. There'd be some responses to it, some more responses, assign out some work. We'd reconvene an admin team the next week. Where are we at? Let's go ahead and update that as we try to flesh and tease all of that out. So that's kind of my component from the principal perspective. I'm going to turn it over to these guys to talk about their aspects of it.
First thing we started with was just looking at the fact that we've got all this stuff already. Where we could just not reinvent it, simply reorganize all of our systems and put them all in one place and make it accessible.
More high school.
I'm sorry?
The microphone is not picking up.
Speak louder, Tim.
Louder? Okay. So we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just simply organized all of our systems in one place and looked at it as an advantage of the MTSS handbook to kind of organize everything that we already have. So speaking from the middle school math perspective, we've broken down our tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 interventions. And we've got our handbook linked in there in the presentation to look at it. But we started by really defining what our tier 1 system looks like in the math classroom. And for a lot of our content too, we use the Mastery Learning through Dr. Gusky. And so we deliver our first target, our first standard with the students in the classroom. And then instead of spending that time to review before we assess it, we'd go in and give that first assessment and differentiate our groups based upon the formative data in the classroom into either a correctness group or an enrichment group, and letting those students that are ready to move on or have already mastered the standards to dig into some enrichment activities or big projects that they've been working on throughout the year already. And inside that correctives group, we quickly divide them into 1 or 2 groups, students that are far away from the target or are really close to being there and just need a little bit of intervention in order to move into the enrichment side of it. And then we would deliver that second assessment on that same standard. And we've got a bunch of data trackers that we use in all the PLCs so we can show growth and see how our novices are decreasing, health of deficient and distinguished are increasing. For the tier 2 for the math, we looked at our team intervention time that we have built in. So each of our grade levels have an intervention block anywhere from 48 to 52 minutes built in on team. All students stay on team there, and one teacher will do an enrichment class, while the other 3 are doing an intervention, whether that be 30 students with math, or we'll have 2 teachers that will be reading, or 2 teachers that will do math. We'll kind of chop it up based upon needs for each individual team. And the students are placed in there for 1 of 2 reasons. Either the math scores say that they need a higher level of intervention that's not 2 or 3, or that going through the master learning protocol, these are students that still are falling behind with the standards, and after going through all that, they're still not meeting the level that we would like to see with our standards. So we're placing tier 2 intervention on team. Our most extreme one that we put a lot of work in the last 2.5 years is our Tier 3 system. We start by identifying our students, and we look at our initial pool. So for our 7th graders next year, we'll run their 6th grade spring math course, and we'll start looking at it by percentile, where our biggest group, our highest it is. We ignore our ECE students because we like to think that they're getting their services already by their IEP and their accommodations and everything there. So we have about 225 spots in Tier 3 math right now. And at any given point, there are about 15 students in 15 different sections of that. We'll look at the instructional plan inside of there. We've been very intentional with that, to where students that are in there will be split between tech days and non-tech days. So at any given day in a Tier 3 class of 4, 7 kids are working on their study island learning path, or they're working on IXL skills determined by the intervention teacher, or they're working on a non-tech day and specifically working with the teacher on standards recovery, whether that be for current class stuff because they've already met benchmark in their 2 instructional areas on the math, or if they're working on standards recovery from 4th to 6th grade to fill the gaps while they're on the percentile that they are. Another big piece of the Tier 3 is our exit plan. So we take into consideration students' math score from fall to winter, and are they growing at a rate either faster than their peers, so they're having a positive CGI. We want to make sure that that's happening. And with core teacher input, we'll send out input on all these students who are up for exit from Tier 3, and they're allowed to share their standards mastery through their playbook. Pretty much yes or no answer, whether or not they think they'll be ready to exit Tier 3, as well as some anecdotal evidence as to why they think that. We also let the Tier 3 teacher do the same thing. So we've also got some, the intervention team has got together and developed some benchmark assessments that marry up to the math instructional areas. That way the students are in there, they're working on their 2 lowest areas. And they meet their benchmark assessment scores, their core teacher thinks they're ready to go, but their Tier 3 teacher thinks they're ready for exit, but they recommend that when they exit, they go to Tier 2 on team, so we're not, just removing all of the interventions that they have in place. So we take all that into account, and then we decide what students are ready to exit and what students are ready to enter and take those places. There's a whole bunch of stuff hyperlinked in here. We use our grade level transition readiness list to break this down of who's going Tier 2, Tier 3, on team, and where the students currently are. So if y'all look at that, it's linked in, kind of get an idea of what our data looks like and where we're pulling from. And then as far as using Tier 1, using map data in there, we try to incorporate in everything that we do. So we like to use map data for Tier 1 twofold. One is to use a learning continuum and map to target students' entrance into the standards. So we'll use the students, let's say a student had a 225 on their RIT level, it puts them in 221 to 230 RIT range. So we'll have an idea of how that 7th grade student should enter the next standard that those teachers are about to start. And talk about that in PLCs. And then from that on, we use formative data in the classroom in order to differentiate those Tier 1 students through where that mastery learning cycle. And then in page 28, for presenting concerns, so what's our acceleration plan by grade level? We broke those down based upon grade level RIT scores and what the highest instructional area of need was. Overwhelmingly, was statistics and probability. And if anyone teaches math or has a background in that, we kind of have a really good idea of why that's a presenting concern. So our PLC is already making up plans. So our 7th grade PLC is, they're planning a 2 to 3 week unit on statistics and probability, and they're going to rotate these students through like a 2 to 3 week cycle for the remainder of the year in order to get them to that probability unit a little bit earlier, so we don't run out of time in that system.
No, you're good. Yeah, I can talk about the reading aspect of it on the middle school side. We mimic a lot of what Tim Alexander has already said with the math, as far as our Tier 1 and our Tier 2. The only difference with our ELA is with our Tier 3 system, where they exit out on a final kind of exam or assessment at the end of that term. We use all of our CFA data and we average it. The students must have an average of 80% or higher, along with meeting their benchmarks in reading plus and actually meeting the benchmark that we have for them on the MAT score. With those three components, that's how they would exit out of our tier 3. With using all the CFAs, that does help us differentiate whether they can do it with multiple mediums of text versus just having one text on an assessment, is the reason that we went with the average of the CFAs. So that's the only difference from what Tim was saying as far as our tier 3 system for exiting and going into a tier 2 intervention instead.
So with the high school side, we have a slightly different environment and access to different resources. Middle school side gets a lot of grant money that helps cover staff to teach intervention classes. This is also the first year that high school teachers have been exposed to the math test. So a big focus with high school staff as well as high school students, getting them accustomed to the math test. What type of information can we glean from that data, and how can we use that data to change our instructional practices? So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But I did want to talk about how we use some of that data to start differentiating in the classroom, but also some of the other cute interventions that we've managed to do this year using ESS funds. We looked at ACT scores from the previous year. We had a lot of seniors who were planning to take ACT again in order to become college and career ready. So we used that ACT data to develop specific interventions for those students that we were able to provide. And we did pull-out sessions with those students. And again, looking at those deficits and how it impacted the courses that they were currently in. That was very something we really wanted to focus on. This was not just test prep, but we used those test scores to identify students that, of course, needed those interventions, and we're able to provide them for those students. And then again, looking at our math data, using the learning continuum and starting to unpack how that data can impact our instruction. Part of that process, if we can go to the next slide, was not only helping teachers understand what those scores meant and what that testing looked like, but also help students understand it as well. So I'm going to get this closer to the screen if you can see it at all. This is actually a math goal setting sheet that we developed as a team. Myself, the other instructional coaches or master teachers in the building, as well as our back. We developed this math goal setting sheet so that students could input their fall scores, what is their winter goal, and then what was their winter score, what is their growth. So they can track their growth over the entire school year. We had them break it down in their various ranges. And then, let's see if I can go down. Below that, we actually did what does this mean? Where's my area of strength? What is my area of possible concern? That is the language on math that they use for math test results. So we wanted to use the same language. And then we had students come up with an action plan. So this was very much a reflective process of the students and staff own. So that, again, they're analyzing our own data. Teachers are recognizing the impact on learning and on instruction. Students are also recognizing that as well. So the great thing about this piece that we're using is students, every student in our building that took the map assessments, that we all 9th and 11th graders completed this form and then uploaded it to their backpack. And we talked about, we let them choose where they put it in their backpack as successful. We thought this would be good evidence. Again, this is just one way that we really tried with implementing System 5 and using math data. One thing that we wanted to do to put students in control of some of their learning. And again, this is just one of the practices that we've shifted through implementing our MTSS document. Another thing that we've done, and you guys can't see this, but it is hyperlinked. One other thing that we wanted to do is we have all of this data and we want to embed interventions with an effective way that we can do that across the building. So we started looking at instructional practices, what are our resources that we have available to us, and we all know there's a big push in the district right now with using the workshop model. A lot of our teachers in the building had heard about the workshop model, but don't really know how to implement it, how they can embed interventions in the workshop model, and how that really can lead to a lot of use of instructional best practices. So we've developed a workshop rollout plan, and this is, again, connected to the work we're doing with our MTSS document of how we're going to train teachers in use of the workshop model, encourage use of the workshop model throughout the building. A lot of this involves getting teachers involved in opportunities at the district level, like the workshop cohorts that Jenny Averly and Ms. Krasinski are offering right now. We have several staff members involved in that. We plan to have more involved in the future, as well as getting asking districts to come in and offer training, and then looking at each individual PLC, what can we do with data analysis to improve instructional practices through this specific model. So that's all involved in our individual plan. So another thing that we're really doing is becoming more deliberate in our discussions with our analysis of data and providing interventions in PLCs and how we can use map data and common formative assessment data to identify students for different tiered interventions. So again, high school, we're in a very different place than the middle school. They've had access to some of this data longer than we have just by having map assessments. But we're hoping to close that gap between the two sides of the building. And there's been, again, a lot of analysis of data and using that to inform instructional practices.
And then also in the classroom, as far as how the data is driving our instruction, as Erica was pointing out, teachers are really taking it upon themselves to really figure out ways to differentiate the instruction. And it comes down to scaffolded CFAs, looking at kids, what do they need? This CFA might be best to like see if they retain this standard, or if they need some further support or further instruction on that. Another way that they're differentiating things are using their openers and their closers, their bell works or exit slips, as you will, and really like coming in, and there will be like a set of names up there. You're going to do this question, or you're going to do this question. I've hyperlinked an example from our 8th grade ELA class of how they're doing that on the regular, of implementing that to the students and really making sure that they can work and scaffold to their level. We are meeting the students where they are based on their data and trying to close those gaps as quickly as possible, so that they will meet the benchmarks on the future assessment.
We'll go to that last slide. Just the couple lessons that we wanted to reiterate in this process. Organizing those current systems, especially when we look at AIS schools that have so many pressing needs and things that they need to address. We had so many plans that were laying around and so many things that we were doing here, doing there. This coach was doing this, we had this plan to address this. Is really organizing it into that one document, taking existing things and seeing where they kind of dovetail with each other. And then when they don't, really asking the question, is that something we actually do, or is that just a plan on paper? Let's integrate it in this document and make sure that it's something living that we have going on campus. The second point we had there was avoid reinventing the wheel. It's really not rocket science to kind of line out good systems for sound instruction, right? We have this great framework now as a district, our 6 systems to drive instruction and learning. We use that and kind of see where all of this fits and meshes into that. And then the last point being, this, like I said in the beginning part of our presentation, this has got to be collaborative work across the building. It can start in the administrative office as kind of like, let's get our why, wrap our heads around it, go forward, but it's got to spread out to the instructional coaches, counselors, your support personnel, GCCs, master teachers, for us, our student success team, our department chairs, because if we're going to deploy it and actually be the document that does school for us, then there's got to be a lot of hands that are a part of this work. That's what we do here at Moore. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Moore High School. All right, we're ready for Carter.
Okay, hi, I'm Jamie Wyman at Carter. Very excited to be here tonight. We have a great group of educators, and I've heard a lot of great stories so far. We're just going to kind of continue on and share our story at Carter. This is Christy Luther, my counselor. She does an amazing job with our kids every day, and she's going to kind of talk about the behaviors, and I'll stick with the academics. But to kind of begin, our MTSS system has kind of evolved over the past few years. We've had pockets of great things happening everywhere, but then we realized we had to get it all together working in one system, kind of like Rob kind of referenced. This year, we really honed in on our Tier 2 and Tier 3 work because we saw it happening in classrooms and we saw teachers needing that extra support. So we created a larger team that needs to involve more stakeholders and more opportunities for support for all of our kids. And to get that feedback from the teachers as an ongoing monthly process where we can see the growth and the continued areas of support that was needed. My security coach, she leads the meetings every month, and her feedback is very important to the meeting because the work in the PLCs kind of drives our MTSS meetings. So we get the feedback from the teachers and PLCs, and we take it to the large group, and we put all of our heads together and talk about what we can do for the kids academically and behaviorally. We take it back to teachers and support them in the classrooms, and then follow up the next month with how things are working. We've gone to the Google world with our meetings as well. We have an Excel or a sheet document that we keep that has all this data, and we monitor that data every month and share and look at the successes. But it's nice because we can all look at that same document and see where the students are growing and celebrate that, but then also look where the areas of support are still needed. We use the DMC website as well. It gives us great data to talk about and helps us hone in on the certain things that need that extra work as well. But behaviorally, we've gotten solid with our tier 1. We created some new systems with that, and I'll let Ms. Luther kind of take that part.
Yeah.
Carter, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
All right, we heard something now. Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. We tightened up on those tier 1 supports. So the Carter way to behave, the grid posters that talk about behavior expectations school-wide, we've hung more of those. We were more intentional about teaching those expectations in the classrooms and throughout the building. We reference those regularly and make sure that the kids are following those. So, I mean, that's a great start to make sure they're aware of their expectations and to make sure that as adults that we're enforcing those. As far as recognition and reward type things to celebrate them and to recognize their good behaviors, we put in place some dens based on the house systems. We have Carter Cub dens. We have grizzly bears, Kodiak bears, polar bears, and panda bears. The students are vertically aligned into those dens to create community building vertically in the building, and then to celebrate them, they meet together as dens to do things like look at their academic successes for report cards, or they can earn Cub compliments for good behavior when they're caught being good or when they're following those expectations. When their dens earn so many Cub compliments, they get to have celebrations. And so that was another way to improve our behavior tier 1 supports this year that we've implemented. Morning meetings were encouraged in all of the classes to help with those classroom-based relationships. Teachers are doing a great job with those. They are really taking off with those and work with their kids every day on building relationships and getting to know their kids and working with them on how to respond to one another. That's been wonderful. And then as far as those tier 2 and tier 3 needs, those that's still a work in progress. We're looking at those more on an individual basis. I've started a check-in, check-out system with a few of our more intense kiddos. It's been wonderful. They've really shown some good progress. It's a lot of work on the front end, but it's good work. So when you see the success of those kids, it's well worth it. So we're going to look at doing some more of that with other kids that may need that. We worked with teachers on helping them put reward systems in place in the classroom. We've reached out to our district MTSS support people who have also helped us work with some of the individual cases for teachers and help them with some classroom management plans and systems. So yeah, there's some good things going on. We're it's, again, evolving all the time. We're working on that continuously. And we're real anxious to get the universal screeners that was mentioned that the district is going to put in place for the behavior, so that will kind of give us a baseline to start with for those kiddos. I'm going to turn this back over to Ms. Wyman.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so the MTS academic side, our teachers have done an amazing job in their PLC work, looking at map data and their common formative assessments to decide what they need to do in the classroom to meet those needs. We had to do these acceleration plans this year, and it was a new thing, but the biggest part that we wanted our teachers to see is already doing this for your kids. So we wanted them to buy into it and see that what you're doing is working, because the interventions that you're implementing, our students are showing growth. but it's just putting it on a document and monitoring it more intentionally and making sure that the interventions that we're doing are working. And if they're not, what do we need to do differently to make sure that our students are meeting their growth? The plans were developed in on a PD day. I gave the teachers a day, and they were able to look at that map data very intentionally, looking at the learning continuum. My Go Clarity coach and I helped them dive into that data. They looked at these acceleration plans, and we created the acceleration plans, and then we organized them in Google Forms for them. So we have everything, all the teachers can see everything. So they monitor it, and as they give their common formative assessments in PLCs, when we were having those discussions, we can update the acceleration plans. We also communicated these acceleration plans. I think it's on one of the slides. We made little My Growth contracts for each of the students, and the teachers conferenced with the students about what their growth contract was going to look like, what activities they would do with them at school, and then some activities that they could do at home. And then this growth contract was communicated to parents as well, because we wanted the parents to understand the areas of the growth that the students had and needed, and then things that they could do with them at home for that additional support. The learning continuum and these acceleration plans and this whole System 5 process is rolled over into all the other systems, because the instruction that has to occur in the classroom is driven by this. We've seen a huge shift in not only our core, but our Tier 2 and our Tier 3 interventions. The focus group is one new thing that we've been very intentional with this year. The teachers, they make sure that the focus group is based on that learning continuum information. And so within a one workshop time, they're having their core instruction, but then they're also receiving that focus instruction that may be on a different grade level, a lower grade level, or even maybe a higher grade level. So we want to close and increase that learning growth with those kids, and using that focus group has really, really helped that. With the embedded professional development is one thing that I would highly recommend if you're starting this new, because it gave our teachers that time to be intentional with these plans and the planning component, because if they're not planning those effective groups and interventions, you're not going to see the growth in the classroom. So having that time, and then the discussions that they had and the follow-ups to those about what was working, what wasn't working, and sharing that with each other helped us to see it great, like across the grade. Our fourth grade reading was really good in reading growth, and it was because of this intentional work that they've been doing with their kids. So I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Carter. And let me just say right now, with Shawnee and Moore and then Carter, it has been fabulous how you've been able to share the exciting work that you're doing, as well as just kind of giving some ideas on some places that might be leveraged for other people in the same process. So we're going to move on now to Chris Deely, representing Zone 1 as an executive administrator. Welcome.
Thank you, Tara. Good afternoon, everybody. And just want to say thank you to our principals that shared today. Kym, Rob, Jamie, you guys are fantastic, and the teams you brought with you. Just an example of the great people that are working on this work and doing the right thing for kids. You know, when we're talking about the multi-tiered system of supports, it's just the right thing to do for all of our kids. We have to make sure that every student is successful. And this system that we in JCPS call System 5 helps to make sure that we're improving student outcomes for all children. And whether it's an academic barrier or a behavioral barrier, this will help us zone into that and see what's going on and how we can help the students and how we can personalize the work to their specific needs, and to, you know, pull them up and accelerate their progress so that we can get them back on track and get them into the Tier 1. As I was listening to the principals present, I was hearing some common themes and some common language. What I heard from our teams is that in order for this to work at a school, you've got to have a team makeup that includes the key people. And you've got to have different teams doing different parts of the work. And those teams need to have regular meetings. And so that's an important first step. If you're not quite there yet, is to really think about, how do I get teams on board and how do I identify the right people for these teams and set that into motion. I also heard everyone talking about how closely the data is analyzed. And here in JCPS, we are lucky to have the Data Management Center. And there's so much that's being constantly added to that. And it does the work for us. So no longer do we have to sit and pull that data together by hand. It's there. We can pull it. We can pull it for all purposes that we're looking for. Also heard people talking about how systemic their approach is, and it is tight and right. And Jamie, I love that you referenced that our system 5 impacts every other system, because if we can get system 5 right, then we can get our other systems right. You know, sometimes we hear that, well, we've got that flipped RTI triangle, and that the number of kids that we're trying to serve with our supports is unmanageable. And in that case, what we have to think about is then we've got a core program issue, and backing up and looking at our core and figuring out what's going on with the core, that we have this many students that aren't being successful. And that's whether the core, whether it's academic or behavioral. I also heard fluidity, that kids are moving in and out. And that's a part of that regular data analysis and the team meeting, so that a child is not tier 2 from now until the end of the year, that they are moving in and out as necessary. And it's based on data that we can pull from our MAP as our universal screener for academics. I know until we identify a particular behavioral screener for our district, we have schools that are using the Drummond and other sorts of behavioral screeners. But that we're using that data, common formatives, to make sure that kids can move in and out as needed. I heard everyone talking about how important the communication is among the members of the team and with teachers, so that there's regular communication and everyone understands what this system is all about, how we do this. And as Rob referenced, it's our standing operating procedures, and we've got to make sure that everybody knows what those are. And then identification of strategies and programs. I heard different, restorative circles. I heard that we are, using different programs to approach the needs and help personalize the progress for kids. And then, just to top it all off, we've got to have the constant monitoring to make sure that what we're doing in this system is working, and that teams are meeting, and that data is being pulled, and that kids are moving in and out. And that takes a lot of monitoring, and it takes a lot of eyes on the system, especially as you're getting started. So just knowing that you've got to have someone kind of overseeing the whole ball of wax to make sure that it's working. So really what we're looking at is, how are we responding when kids are not being successful? And our MTSS handbooks here that we are in the refinement stage of right now helps us to get that down on paper, so that we understand what we're going to do for a student, how we're going to respond when a student's not being successful. As far as district support here in JCPS, we're very fortunate this year, and I heard reference to our MTSS support people. We now, as zones and high school and middle school, have support people that are on call at all times to be able to go to schools and support schools in the work. So we have our MTSS academic resource teachers, our behavioral resource teachers. We have our curriculum folks from teaching and learning that will go out and help with this work. Our ECE department, our ESL department, we have people in both of those departments that can be consultants on this work and help to drive the work along. The other component that the district can assist with is helping with materials and programming. And we talked today at our elementary principals meeting about being very strategic with selection of those and really analyzing the data to see if we've chosen something, a program, to constantly analyze that data to see if it's working and we're getting success from it. And then scheduling. I also heard the principals speak towards scheduling and making sure that kids were not missing their core instruction. And that's another piece that the executive administrators and assistant superintendents and all the folks in all of our offices can help with that scheduling. And just sometimes it's just an extra pair of eyes looking at a schedule. And, you know, you get so caught up in the work that sometimes just somebody can sit down with you and kind of go through it. So our district has lots of people ready to come out and assist with the work. And we want to make sure that everyone in JCPS understands that we're on call and we're ready to come out and share the work with you. And again, I just want to thank Tara for the opportunity. This is such an important topic, and we've got to make sure that all of our kids are being successful and no one's being left behind, and that we are doing the right things for all of our kids. So thanks, everyone.
So before we leave, thank you very much, Chris. I have to say, this was an extraordinary virtual session tonight. I don't know how to make it any clearer. I'm glad you can at least see my face, but this was inspiring. It is clearly the right work. And I had a couple of points I wanted to follow up on before I allow everyone to start their evening. And the first point I want to make is thank you. Not only did you make time tonight, but you were able to give us some insights into the hard work of the individuals that comprise each of your staff and the work that you're doing at the district, Chris. It's critical that we continue this conversation so that we are all learning and growing from each other. The second point I wanted to point out is, Jamie, you had mentioned at some point in the conversation about remediating and accelerating, and that is so critical to being able to find out exactly where students are and being able to move accordingly with that. Another piece that I think Chris brought out that supported some things that were said with both Shawnee, well, actually all three of you, Shawnee, Moore, and Carter, is you talked a little bit about making sure that we are paying attention to that core instruction. And might I add to that, especially with groups of students who typically have been underserved, sometimes people look at the ECE and ELL students as they are receiving extra services, but it was vitally important for a turnaround situation in a building where I was principal, that we made sure that that core instruction was protected, and the times they were pulled out were in addition. So I also wanted to throw that in. And two, in some of the schools that have started this MTSS work, I know that we as a district are moving systemically as one right now. But I do want to give you a glimmer of some things to expect at the end of the year with this kind of coherence and communication. One of the schools that I can think of moved from the 43rd to the 93rd percentile in 2 years. Another school moved over 50 percentile points too, in looking at state assessments. Also with this approach, very aggressive moves and shifts came about just because of this one detail being very intentional. And the last idea, I'll leave with an idea, is when a place where I was principal, one of the things we added to the MTSS process was we actually started talking to the students where we were looking at how do we affect this change and shift. We pulled in a few people strategically when we were looking to find out how we could reach them. So just food for thought. I'm going to end with just saying thank you to each of you. I am truly better for it in my knowledge base, listening to all of you. Huge thanks to you, Elaine, for making technology easy and accessible. And all of you, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for sharing your expertise. And we all know, and I especially know, you have got some of the hardest work in this country that you're facing right now. And I'm so proud to serve with you. Have a great evening, and thank you.